Welcome back to the Cooking with Caleb channel today, and today we are going to make some high-protein pepperoni pizza Hot Pockets. Let's get started. Of course, first step with anything cooking related is you're going to wash your hands. So, get some nice warm water running, wait for it to heat up, and then just wash your hands.
12 seconds later.
The next step is you are going to preheat your oven to 425. Like so. Alrighty, and now to get started working on your dough, what you're going to do is you're going to start off with 2 cups of plain Greek yogurt. Oh goodness. Take maybe a little something, just kind of even that off, pour the excess back into the container. And you are just going to pour that all in there. Let me actually get a spoon for this real quick. Okay. Now that I've got a spoon, alrighty, 1 cup down. Let's go get that second one. And then you are going to want 2 cups of all-purpose baking flour. After cleaning out your cup, at least. But you're going to want 2 cups of flour there. And then you're going to get 3 teaspoons of baking powder. I like to use the Food Club brand, however, any brand will do, of course. Alright. Opening kind of like that there. And we'll take your teaspoon measuring cup. just measure out 3 teaspoons. Like so. And then you'll want 1 teaspoon of salt. Mix into that. Any salt will do, whether that's kosher salt or sea salt. I like to use iodized salt myself. However, adjust your recipe accordingly. All right. And with that in there, now all you gotta do is just mix that all up like so.
Eventually.
And once you have the dough all combined, you get all those ingredients nice and mixed up, you're going to want to do is take those freshly washed hands and just kind of roll the ingredients up into a ball yourself. So this will go a little bit longer actually before I start trying to do that.
One minute, 37 seconds later. You'll want to get that dough nice and mixed up into a ball, and then you're going to transfer it to a floured surface. So let me cut to that in just a moment. All right, so to lightly flour your surface, what you're going to do, and that is the oven timer going off telling me that it's hit 425, is you're going to take a little handful of flour. You're just going to kind of spread it across the surface like so. Simple as that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take one of your dough balls and you're just going to place it right on top of the floured surface, and then you're going to take a knife and you're going to cut that bad boy in half. Like so. And then, of course, you'll do the exact same with one of your other dough balls. Get it into a nice ball shape, like so. And then you'll just place it down, maybe spread it out a little bit, and then take your knife, just cut it in half, just like that. All right, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna take 2 of these dough halves here, you're gonna return them right back to the mixing bowl, and with the other 2 halves, what you're gonna do is you are just gonna roll those out into a nice large rectangle. So what you'll wanna do is just reflour your surface and your cooking implement just a little bit more, just to help get the dough nice, compliant. So you'll just roll out your dough like so. You may need to reflour your surface or your cooking implement a few times throughout the process, of course, but that's okay.
Eventually.
But once you really start to get both of them kind of evened out, what you'll want to do is kind of recombine them, reflour your surface a little bit more. And then you want to just roll them out until they get into a nice flat kind of rectangular shape. So you'll just keep going like so. And of course you'll want your surface to be nice and clean. I'm using a cutting board for this just because I don't trust the counter right now. But once you get it into a kind of rectangular shape, what you're going to want to do is you'll take a knife and then you're going to cut this into quarters. Let me go get that knife real quick. All right, so you'll just take your knife here, cut it into half like that, then cut those halves into quarters like so. Alrighty, and now let's get to making the fillings. Alright, so as part of the fillings, you're going to want to do some pepperonis, of course. So what I like to do is I like to take my pepperonis like so, and I chop them up into much smaller pieces. This will help ensure that they aren't too huge for the dough that they become a problem, and so that way you can get a nice mix of sauce, cheese, and pepperoni in there all at once. So what you'll want to do, just kind of slice these up into smaller pieces. You'll want to have around a half a cup of these chopped up pepperonis. However, of course, if you like having more pepperonis in your pizza, you have all the power to adjust as you desire. And of course, don't really worry if you go over half a cup in your initial measurement. You'll want to have a little bit extra just in case you want to make a little bit of a meat lover's hot pocket. All right, now with your chopped up pepperonis, you'll just kind of sprinkle them across each of these little quadrants of dough. Of course, as we have a second dough ball sitting in the little bowl back there, we'll have to go with around 1/4 cup here across all 4. But of course, you can just adjust accordingly, add a few extra pepperonis or fewer if you don't really like them all that much. Regardless, whenever you've done all the pepperoni you want to do, what you're going to want to do is take some pizza sauce, around 1/2 cup as well. Take a little spoon to it, just kind of drizzle that over each of the little dough quadrants there. So a little bit like that. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take some finely shredded mozzarella cheese. You are just going to sprinkle that all over these bad boys. I don't really use an exact measurement for this, so you can go as high or low as you desire, whatever fits best on your dough, as well as whatever you prefer personally. So, just kind of like that. And then what you'll want to do is you'll want to take each of the quadrants, kind of tuck them in, get them nice and enclosed so that way there aren't any issues. So you'll just kind of pinch the sides like so after you've folded the top over it. Pinch it nice and tight so that way there's going to be very little to none of it getting out in the oven. So you'll want to do like that. You want to get them nice and closed off. There you go. And then what I like to do before I get these into the oven is I like to put a little bit of tin foil down underneath them. Just makes the cleanup that much easier when it's done. So then what you'll do is you'll take those hot pockets from the cutting board surface and you're just going to move them straight onto there, like so. And then afterwards, you are going to take one large egg, like so, and you're going to break it into a bowl, like that. What you're going to do is you'll take a fork, and you're just going to beat that egg nice and yolky, as I like to call it. So it's kind of like that there, mostly yolk, and you're just gonna take some of that, spread it on top of your Hot Pockets. Goodness. Oh, goodness. This will help with the flavor and the texture. So you'll just spread it on over there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take 1 tablespoon of Italian seasoning. I like to use the Great Value brand. Any brand will work so long as it's Italian seasoning. And I just like to kind of sprinkle it on top of each of the Hot Pockets. That was a little too much there. But you just do that, and then that'll help give the Hot Pockets a little bit more of that pizza taste. And of course, what you can do if you pour a little bit too much in there, just kind of take your fork from the egg and spread it around a little bit. Just help get the flavor all across the Hot Pocket instead of centralized straight to the middle. And then one additional step that I like to do is I like to take a little bit of garlic powder. Again, Great Value brand, any brand will do. I just kind of sprinkle that on top, like so. And you are all set. You can just throw these bad boys straight into the oven at 425. You'll want to have them in there for about 10 to 12 minutes roughly. All right, and then once your Hot Pockets are out of the oven, what you're going to do is you're going to take a little fork there, just poke it into each of them, kind of test the dough, see if it's nice and crispy enough. If it isn't really crispy enough, just throw it back into the oven for like an additional 3 to 5 minutes, I would say, at the most. And then what we'll do is we're just going to kind of peel these off here. Burned myself there. It's okay. Let me actually get a spatula for this. Hold on. Ta-da! Okay. So we'll just take your spatula, just kind of peel them off. You don't want to be too aggressive with it, just because you may end up breaking the dough, and then your ingredients and the innards of the Hot Pocket are just gonna go spilling all out across the place, and we don't want that now, do we? Now, mine are a little bit whiter. That's due to the amount of flour that I had to use to really get them flattened out. Yours should turn out nice and kind of a crispy golden brown look to them. All right, let's see. You see, if you break the dough open like what I just did there, it'll cause issues with really getting it off of the tin foil here. Especially like that, you'll end up with bits of tin foil that just stick to the dough and become issues in their own right. And then it just ends up making a whole dang mess of things. Deal with cleaning that one up later. Clean this up in post. Okay, once you've finished making your Hot Pockets and you finish eating as many as you need to store them, what you'll want to do is you will take some tin foil. You're going to take your Hot Pocket. You'll just wrap it up nice and neatly in the tin foil. Make sure that it's covered completely. So something kind of like that, for example. And then what you're going to do is you'll take a Sharpie or a pen, you'll just scribble your name and a date on there, and then you can store these safely in the freezer for up to 3 months. That was Pepperoni Pizza Hot Pockets. I hope you enjoyed. See you later.